My name is Jeremy. I'm one of the pastors here at the church, and glad to see everybody. We are a simple church to understand if you're new here and you want to know what this is about. We're built on two things. We're built on the Bible, and we're built for the community. That is our thing. That's just what we are. So everything we do here is about studying the Bible, applying the Bible, really knowing God's Word. Getting into deep conversations about the Bible, being able to explain the Bible. That's what we're all about, okay? I always joke around, if you need to use the bathroom during the week and you come into the church, you got to read a Bible verse before you do it. If you're going number 2, you got to read 2 Bible verses. I'm just saying, like, everything we do is the Bible, you know, because unfortunately in our modern culture today, there's churches that want to do less things with the Bible. And I want to have us know our Bible and be able to defend our Bible and understand our Bible. So I feel like a Wild West slinger right now. I'm pulling out guns. But so that's one, right? And so the next one is community. Those are our 2 pillars, Bible, community. So community is friendships, it's discipleship, it's why we have food after every single thing we do here at this church. It's great for friends. It's great to make friends, you know, but it's bad for the waistline, but it's great for friendship. You know, food is awesome. But, I mean, the Bible talks about iron sharpening iron, about helping each other out, lifting each other up, edifying each other. This is what the community aspect is about. So, building friendships, having discipleship of the church to make us, you know, hopefully a healthy church that can then reach out into an unhealthy community spiritually, right? That's what New Mountain Church is about. And I haven't told anybody about this, but even recently we've started a ministry here called Peak. And in Peak, it's all about training and equipping future ministers for God's ministry, for the gospel ministry. And it's been awesome because that is what it's about, equipping people. See, we gotta push pause on the modern day church. The modern day church seems to be about you need to come and just watch what happens at church. And then you go home and you do your own thing. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Oh, but then you come back Sunday, though, and you watch church happen. And then you go home, see what's on TV, eat some food, go to work on Monday. Like, stop. We need to push pause on that. Because it's actually, we are the church, and everything that we do is a part of the church. So, like, if you're at work on Monday and you're a complete jerk, you're making Jesus look bad. Like, it's an all-encompassing thing, being a Christian. And so coming to church is simply this. It's just the gathering of the saints. So that means that we come together to hear from God by His spoken word, and we come to talk to God through worship and prayer. That's simply it. That's what the church is all about. Guess what it's not about? It's not about being wowed and excited and just enthralled with the production of everything. It's not about that at all. Like, at least that's not what the ancient church was about. And so this is what we're about, Bible and community. That's it. That is it. Today we are going to be looking into Luke 21. We've been going through the book of Luke because we go verse by verse here at this church. And we've been getting to some pretty amazing things. The whole chapter of 20 with Luke was questions. The disciples were with Jesus, and the Pharisees started asking Jesus questions. The Sadducees started asking Jesus questions. But now we've seen it kind of flip, and Jesus is starting to ask his own questions to have those who listen, have them understand. Sometimes you need to ask a question to somebody for them to understand. They won't get it if you give them the answer. You need to give them the question. So, if you think about this, how many times do you think Jerusalem has been conquered over the course of our history? I don't have that many fingers and toes, so I don't know. It's a lot of times. Yeah, it's a lot of times. We're going to look at, just since Jesus, what has happened in Jerusalem up till now, okay? Layla, you ready? Okay, we got a bunch of pictures. Today is not going to be like a normal sermon. I got like a bunch of pictures. You know, those are the type of books I like to read, the ones with pictures, you know, big letters and pictures, you know, the pop-ups, you know, like the little kid books, you know, something pops up. I love those. But today we're going to have a bunch of pictures because it's going to be a heavy history day today, okay? If you think about this, it took 85 years just about to build the temple in Jerusalem. 85 years. Did you know that it was only completed for 6 years before it got destroyed? It got destroyed with a capital D. The Romans came by, destroyed it in 70 AD. In fact, they destroyed it because the Jewish people revolted. And in order to squash the revolt, they demolished Jerusalem along with the temple. But in 135 AD, the city gets rebuilt. Okay? But then in 614, Persians come in. Oh man, those Persians. They come in, take it over, but then there's a group of Roman Christians that come back in 629 and take it back. Heraclius, we got a picture of him. He's very nicely chopping somebody's head off. Sorry kids. Then that don't last that long. 637, the Caliph Omar, he comes in and takes the city from the Romans. Okay. 691, the Dome of the Rock is built over the top of where they thought the temple would have been. Problem is, the temple was so destroyed that it's a slight guessing game to know exactly where the temple was. But they built the Dome of the Rock there, right there on the site. We see that stayed that's still there today, but they stayed in power for a long time. Crusaders come in 1089 and start to try to take back Jerusalem, to try to conquer Jerusalem for God. We don't need to be conquering anything for God. You know why? Because he already has it. God's in control of all things and sovereign over all things, but unfortunately the Crusaders thought it'd be a good idea to go back and take Jerusalem, so there was a mixture of a few little victories, but a whole bunch of failures. 9 crusades there was. There was even one crusade called the Children's Crusade. It's probably the saddest crusade ever, because a group of teenagers from France thought it'd be great to get young people together to go to Jerusalem and just ask them to give back Jerusalem. And so they got I think 100 miles, and they got sold into slavery. It was just just such a letdown. But, okay. But then 1187, Saladin, he comes and he takes Jerusalem. You notice there's a constant give and take. There's a constant pull and tug. There's a constant victory and defeat. We see Selim I of Turkey. He takes it in 1517. The crescent flag flying high over Jerusalem for a very long time after that, until General Allenby, he comes by in 1917, takes it back. It don't stop there. What happens after 1917, we know. We get into a war, don't we? We get a really hard World War II takes place. But after that, after the brutality that was placed upon the Jewish nation from the Nazis, the United Nations bring the Jewish people back together in Israel, and Jerusalem is set for them. 1948, Jerusalem, there's the council that meets, and Israel is made a nation again. First time in over 2,000 years. That one thing, all those different people that were destroying and rebuilding and conquering and retaking Jerusalem, it leads up to the moment of 1948, where prophecy is fulfilled in the Bible. If you were to ask any theologian, any scholar, or any studied pastor, you'd know that 1948 starts the beginning of the end times. Now, how that rolls out after that, there's a lot of debate in that, and that's okay. I was talking to a sister last service about when I taught through the book of Revelation, I taught all perspectives of it, because different people have different ideas about how the end will unfold. Do you know what mine is? what was it? You got it. I'm a pan millennial. It means it'll all pan out in the end. Because I believe in Jesus Christ. No, I'm just joking. But that's how it goes. There's a bunch of different viewpoints on that. But no matter what, the one concreted, solidified, put in stone start is the fact that Israel was made a nation again in 1948. We see that there's been, over our course of our history, there's been constant attacks on Israel. Over and over again have people and kingdoms and kings and warriors and warlords have tried to destroy Jerusalem. And you might break down the walls. You might destroy the buildings and knock the stones off of each other, but you can't kill what God has made a covenant with. God has made a covenant with Israel. Unfortunately, there's a thing that has been going around for like the last 100 years called replacement theology, where people have the idea that the church, the modern day church, has replaced Israel, has replaced the Jews. That is an incorrect understanding. See, we have a different covenant. We have the covenant of Jesus Christ, where we have been grafted in to the family of God. We have been adopted into the family of God. You see, we're not replacing the Jewish people or Israel. Israel has a place in God's plan. Look what it says in this section of Scripture, Zechariah 12, 1 through 3. It says, "The oracle of the word of the Lord concerning Israel. Thus declares the Lord, who stretched out the heavens and founded the earth and formed the spirit of man within him. Behold, I am about to make Jerusalem a cup of staggering to all the surrounding people. The siege of Jerusalem will also be against Judah. And on that day I will make Jerusalem a heavy stone for all the peoples. All who lift it will surely hurt themselves, and all the nations of the earth will gather against it." Sounds like we're almost there now. It don't matter how many nations come against Israel. God has a plan. It's written out in the book of Revelation what happens. All nations eventually do rise up against Israel. But what happens as Jesus comes back? If you've read the last book in your Bible, you shouldn't be scared. You should be filled with hope and excitement about what's going to happen. Because once Jesus comes back, he's not coming back on the back of a donkey. He's not coming in peace. He's coming for judgment. He's coming to destroy. And I know nobody wants to talk about that side of Jesus. Everybody wants the white-skinned, Pantene hair Jesus that's on their grandma's wall. Like holding a little lamb. It's like, when was Jesus holding lambs? But Jesus is kind and loving. Jesus is compassionate. Yes, I totally agree. But at the same time, Jesus comes back in judgment. And I guess that's what should light the fire under all of us. They call Jesus our Lord. We should be telling people about Jesus, helping people understand the Bible. Because if not, what's the other alternative? They come back and Jesus judges them, right? It says the sword from his mouth, meaning the word, right? And it says in the end, the earth is destroyed by fire, meteors flying out of the sky. This is big time stuff. But the fact of the matter is that Jesus is in control. He holds all things together. He's brought all things into existence. And now for us, it's him who we focus on. So we are going to look at verse 5 through 9 of chapter 21. So, at New Mountain, just to show a reverence for God's word, we stand for the reading of God's word. This is Luke 21, 5 through 9. Luke 21, 5 through 9. If you need Bibles, there's a bunch of Bibles back there on that table. Brian will give you one. It says this, And while some were speaking of the temple, how it was adorned with noble stones and offerings, he said, as for these things that you see, the days will come when there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down. And they asked him, Teacher, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of these things as they're about to take place? And he said, See that you are not led astray, for many will come in my name, saying, I am he, and the time is at hand. Do not go after them. And when you hear of wars and tumults, don't be terrified, for these things must first take place, but the end will not be at once. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you so much, Lord, for your insight into the end. Lord, help us to know what's coming next. Help us to be ready. Help us to be prepared, Lord. God, no man can know the day or the hour, but we know that you're sovereign, you're perfect, and you're in control. And so, Lord, we rest on that. Jesus, we thank you for your ministry, your life, we thank you for all of who you are, Lord. Help us today to apply this to our lives. Help us today to search our hearts. We thank you. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Okay, you may be seated. So a recap about what we've been through already. Luke 20, we see a bunch of questions coming against Jesus. A bunch of people asking him, where does his authority come from? But there's something funny that we see in chapter 19. We see Jesus riding into Jerusalem on the back of a donkey's colt, symbolizing peace. That's how kings would have done it back in those days. They would have rode into a nation at a time of peace on the back of a donkey. Now, Jesus comes in, everybody's singing, praising, Hosanna. They're like lifting him up big time, right? I mean, they're laying cloaks on the ground. I mean, it is like the best parade ever for Jesus to come in. You'd think that Jesus would be happy, right? You'd think that Jesus would be excited about this, right? Well, he comes in, and what does he do? Bible nerds, what does he do? What does he do before he cleans out the temple? He weeps. What? He just had a parade. He comes in and he weeps. He's not about any of the pomp. He comes in and he sees Jerusalem, who doesn't get it. Jerusalem, who's looking for a Messiah that's going to free them from their political bondage with Rome. And he's weeping over the fact that he knows what's going to happen to Jerusalem. He knows what will be their end. He weeps over that. Jesus is compassionate. He is not willing that any should perish, right? Scripture. But we see that this brought him to tears. And so as he's saying these things, I'm sure his heart is heavy at the same time. The title of the sermon today is Signs of the Times. There's always going to be those things that we can see coming towards the end. In fact, in Revelation, it's known as the birth pangs. Any of you women in here that have had babies, you know that the contractions come, they get more intense, more frequent, right? You know that the baby's coming, and you guys, I know you don't get none of that. And so let me put it into guy terms. Your tachometer in your truck, it revs up. That's the same thing. The end time is going to rev up. We're going to see it getting closer to the red line. Look at this. This is 5 and 6 of chapter 21. And while some were speaking of the temple, how it was adorned with noble stones and offerings, he said, as for these things that you see, the days will come when there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down. Oh, yikes. That's the same thing he said in chapter 19. It's all going to be torn apart. Look at the temple. I got some pictures of the temple. This is a reenactment or recreation of the temple. Large palace, different sections to go in if you were a different type of a person. Look at the closer picture. We see gold on it, right? Bang. Big old white chunks of marble and gold. King Herod, he added to the temple's square footage back 19 BC, and it was completed in 63 AD. The temple wasn't just big, it was also beautiful. I mean, the Jewish historian Josephus, he talks about this temple being so brilliant with the gold shining in the sun, and he talks about travelers coming up to Jerusalem, and they're thinking it's snowing because of the white marble up there. It is just great and grand and beautiful looking. But as great as the temple was, Jesus never hesitated to claim that he was greater than the temple. It says this in Matthew 12, 6-7. I tell you something greater than the temple is here. And if you had known what this means, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the guiltless. Jesus quotes from a verse where it talks about, I desire mercy and not sacrifice. The temple was made for sacrifice. Jesus says there's something greater here. And this is Jesus. Jesus desires mercy, not sacrifice. The Bible says that there's no man will be saved by the sacrifice of bulls and goats. You will never be saved by your religiosity or by your things that you do. The only way to be saved is through faith and trust in Jesus Christ alone. It is all through grace that we are saved. We can't do nothing about it. Problem is, our human nature, we want to be able to do something about it. Our human nature, we want to be hands-on. We want to make sure that we can solidify our salvation. Problem is, you cannot. You can't. There is only one way, and it's all of grace through Christ. Well, for many Jews of that day, the temple had become an idol. They longed to be at the temple more than even to be with God. They longed to talk about the temple more than the things of God. That baby he's really getting it. Like, he's getting this message. Can somebody throw me a water? I'm like dying over here today. I don't know what's up with me today. Look, you throw it to me. It hit me in the face. Yeah. So listen. I mean, we're looking back at these people, right? Oh, why are they so enthralled with the temple? What are you enthralled with? John Calvin, a theologian from France, says that the human heart is idol factory, an idol factory. Oh, thanks, John. Appreciate it. Thank you. So, what's your idol? Oh, not me. I'm a Christian. I come to church every Sunday. I have no idols. Think about this. Here's a test. To see if you have idols. There's only one question on this paper. Okay. What do you think about the most? In life, what do you think about the most? I know in some people's heads, something's popping up, right? That's your idol. Money? Well, I know a way you can get rid of that idol. Just go ahead and, you just, here, I put my pocket in here. Yeah. That's the only question is, what do you think about the most? What do you think about? So you don't have to answer it either. You don't have to answer this one, but you need to analyze yourself. What do I think about the most? See, some of us, our worries can become our idols because we're so worried about things that it enthralls us or wraps us up into what's going to happen. Where is this going to go? What's going to proceed from this? Some people get wrapped up in their business is their idol. They think about their business. Oh, I got to have my mind on my business. I got to make sure that this is happening. Got to make sure these orders are coming in. Got to make sure these customers are happy. That's your idol. Some moms in here, your kids can be your idol. Do you know that? If your kids are what gives you purpose and identity, if your kids are what you're constantly thinking about, then your kids can become your idol. Your husband, your wife, they could become your idol. It's what do you think about the most? What do you What do you really think about the most? Now, I'm not trying to act like I got this worked out, by the way. I'm probably the worst in this room at this. But I know that this is the way. It's the way to be excited about the things of God, to pray and have a relationship, an open dialogue with God that is vibrant, right? To know God's word by not just reading my Bible, but by studying my Bible. To actually hang around other Christians and actually have fellowship with other Christians. I mean, I know the way to put things right, but what makes me hold back and not go all the way in? What makes me do that? I know that I'm not alone. I know that other people have a hard time too with that. But that's the struggle, right? We gotta be struggling against the flesh, not giving into the flesh. And you know what? When you struggle against the flesh, it's not going to feel great. You're actually going to have to be a little religious. Ooh, I said it. Nobody likes the R word anymore. Sometimes you got to get a little bit religious and actually, no, I'm going to study my Bible from this time to this time because if I don't set a time, it'll slip by. So I'm going to do it. That's being religious in the good sense. Whenever you be religious and it is an empty religion where you're just doing things to go through the motions, or I used to do this back in the day. Read a page just to say, I read a page of the Bible. What was on that page? I don't know. I read it though. Back in school, I had the hardest time with that. In school, they make you read books in school, don't you know that? I would read books and my eyes would be going along the words and my mind is like off in La La Land. I'm thinking about like dumb things, go-karts and midgets or something but my eyes are reading the page. Yeah, you think about golf carts and midgets or go-karts and midgets, yeah. But when I became a Christian, I knew that was a problem I had, and so I got a little bit religious with it. I made a deal with myself. If I got to the bottom of the page and I couldn't remember what I read or remember what it was about, I would go right back up to the top and read it again. So, yeah, it took me like 5 years to read the Bible the first time, but I read it though. I read it and I understood it. That's the difference. That's the difference. What is your idol? These guys had a heavy-duty infatuation with the temple. Now, as the Romans come and destroy the temple, right, they get their pickaxes, their crowbars. I don't know if they had those tools back then, but they had something like it. And they were completely taking one stone off the other. There was a drunken Roman soldier at the time that actually got everybody together, and you know how a drunk guy can just get everybody together. Well, he got everybody together, and they burned the temple, right? But you can sort of burn marble, but not really. But what you can do is burn the gold, right? On the picture, remember the gold? And the gold melted and fell in between the cracks, and so they're constantly taking block after block off of one another just to be able to grab all that gold and seize it. And Jesus is over here twice, and then also in the other Gospels, he's also saying it, not one stone will be left upon another. The destruction was so complete that even today, there's difficulty knowing exactly where the temple is. So what it says in verse 7, and they asked him, Teacher, when will these things be, and what will be the sign when these things are about to take place? They're wondering. They're really worried, right? The disciples are asking Jesus, you're saying some crazy things, Jesus. Will we have a heads up that this is going to happen? How are we going to know that this is going to happen? In the other Gospels, this is known as the Olivet Discourse, because for Matthew, this has taken place on the Mount of Olives. But for Luke, we see this in this section right here. This is what Jesus says in verse 8. And he said, See that you are not led astray, for many will come in my name, saying, I am he, and the time is at hand Do not go after them. He says you're going to see something happening. When all this stuff is going to happen, you're going to see some things. We're going to get into it in the next section of Scripture in the following weeks. But Jesus says you're going to see imitators. You're going to see deceivers, charlatans, fakes. You're going to see them. Did you know that after Jesus ascended, for years and years and years after that, Felix, the general of the Roman army, was putting to death one fake Jesus a day? Because they'd all pop up. Think about the explosion of interest that took place after Jesus, right? Obviously, it changed the world, right? The disciples went everywhere. The church history tells us that the gospel spread all throughout the whole globe. Why not? Wouldn't people be like, oh, well, maybe I'm Jesus now. Hey, everybody, I'm Jesus. In fact, there was one guy 100 years after Jesus who said that he was the Messiah. He said he was the Jewish Messiah. His name is Bar Kokhba, and he comes by and he starts making like victories over the Romans, right? Remember, this is what the Jewish people wanted. They wanted a political savior. They wanted the Donald Trump of Israel, hair and all. But Bar Kokhba, he comes by and he's like, oh, and he's making victories over the Romans. And everybody starts to go, oh, maybe he is the Messiah. Maybe we should go after him. And then the Romans squish him. Maybe not. It happens over and over again through church history. People trying to act like they are the Messiah. And it just ramps up over time. There's thousands and thousands of people over the course of our history that have said that they're Jesus. There's one guy, A.J. Miller, in Australia. He's a cult leader in Australia that he says he is Jesus reincarnated, mate. There's a lady named Yang Ding, which her code name is Lightning. That is a cool code name, but she thinks she is the female Christ, and she's in a cult in China. When the Romans came against Jerusalem, Josephus in his, I think it's the Antiquities or the Jewish Wars, I can't remember which book, but he talks about these people fleeing from Jerusalem, but there's already there a deceiver, a false prophet saying, oh, I know God told me that you need to go up to the top of the temple. And so like a whole bunch of these refugees coming out of Jerusalem go up to the temple. Well, what happens? They burn the temple and they all die. You see, this is the problem why Jesus is so fixated on do not follow false teachers. He says that because the results of following false teachers are dire. It can lead to destruction. You can be deceived by somebody, and it can affect you and your kids and your grandkids and your great-grandkids and your great-great-grandkids. Who knows? It could echo into eternity. If you make a decision to follow a false teacher, there is no salvation for you. If you get your kids to follow false teachers, there is no salvation for them. So let me throw out a hypothetical for you. Back in the day, it would have been my great-great-grandfather or whatever. He came out west with the Mormons. Golden plates and seer stone and all. I don't know. But anyways, there was the Mormon advance where they came out west, right? That was back in the day. It's before Utah. And my relative was with him. And his dad was like a bishop there, or whatever the leader is, one of the leaders for that. Along the journey, my relative said, I don't think so. and he made a left-hand turn and went into Mexico. He was excommunicated, cut off, never talked to his family again in the Mormon religion. Now, fast forward, my grandfather came over to America when he was a kid. But what if my relative, great-great-great-grandfather, whoever, what if he would have just said, sounds good, let's do it. Giddy up. They were on horses. What if he would have just stayed? What would have happened? Would I be a Mormon today? I wouldn't be saved. There would be no salvation for me. Mormonism, they look to a false Jesus. For their understanding, Jesus is Lucifer's brother, created by God. That is not the Jesus of Scripture. And you do need to know the Jesus of Scripture to be saved. So following false teachers can lead to destruction. That's why it's so drastic. That's why Jesus is so emphatic with having them understand this. Look at this. London astrologers, I got a picture coming up, freaked everybody out when they interpreted the alignment of the planets in the constellation Pisces, because there was a group of people that thought, it's all aligned, and as Pisces, that means that there's going to be a flood. And I'm talking about like thousands of people got together. They went up to mountains, and they even built boats. Guess what? No flood happened. You can lead people astray very easily. Or how about this? May 19th, 1780. A heavy gloom fell over New England. Dark fog. There was a fire in the forests, and there was heavy fog, and so there was a group of Christians that thought the end was coming. This was it. All over. Game over. This group of people were called the Shakers. You know why? I even see some Christians nowadays doing that. They thought it was end times right then. They thought Jesus was coming back right then. Problem with them is they also have a Messiah complex, unfortunately, because Ann Lee, a leader for that organization, she thought she embodied all the perfections of God. In female form, considered herself the female version of Christ. Stop. Come on, people. Or how about William Miller? He tricked thousands of followers. They were called the Millerites. They drink Miller Lite. But he deceived them back in the day, 1843. The world's going to end. It's all coming to an end. What happened, though, the day after? I thought you said it was going to come to an end. Oh, I meant next year. Next year, on the same day. Next year, it's coming to an end. Just wait. What happens? We're still here. So, yeah, do you know what that day is known for in that region? The Great Disappointment. So not only can you hurt people by leading them a false direction, but you can also ruin people's lives, like earthly lives, by doing this. In the early 20th century, astronomers learned that comet trails contained a poisonous gas called the discovery. I wasn't about to try to pronounce that. The discovery sparked widespread panic in 1910. Widespread panic in 1910. Comet trails. Our Earth is going to be passing through that comet trail. It's the Halley's Comet. Oh, no. And so newspapers were putting it in bold print. Just totally making the public turn into a frenzy. We're still here. It's okay. It didn't affect Earth or how about this one? This was probably one of the worst of all the false belief systems. 1876, Charles Taze Russell, founder of the Jehovah's Witnesses, predicted that Christ would return in 1914. He didn't. This study that I looked at, it said that they predicted 7 more end times predictions after 1914, but that's actually wrong. They did it about 12 to 14 times. In fact, in the 70s, the Jehovah's Witnesses had, like, they just put all their poker chips on the table. It's happening finally, and we're for sure. 1970 something, I can't remember the exact date. People were giving away their houses. People were throwing their medication in the trash. I don't need my medication. Jesus is coming back tomorrow. I'm good. I don't need my house. This poor wretch that's going to be burned up in flames, he needs my house for the time being. I don't need it. Jesus is coming back. How many lives were ruined by that? Jesus is very clear. Don't listen to false prophets. Don't listen to those saying that they are Jesus. Don't listen to those saying that the end is near. No man knows the end. Nobody. If you're ever talking to somebody and they're saying, hey, I'm pretty sure that, in May, it's going to happen in May. You already know it's not going to happen in May because they just said it's going to happen in May. No. No man knows the day or the hour. And nobody is Jesus. It don't matter if you're Jim Koresh, or no, what's his name? David Koresh? Don't matter if you're Jim Jones. He also thought that. That's why we don't serve Kool-Aid at church. Ever. And never. Don't matter if you're Charles Manson. Nobody's Jesus except for Jesus. So, before I call up Teen Challenge, bonus round. I'm going to ask two questions. How can you keep yourselves from being led astray? Huh? Know the truth. Know a truth or the truth? The truth. Read the Bible. Okay, there's a bunch of answers to this question. Led by the Spirit. Prayer. We're missing one. How can you keep from being led astray? You have a mentor there you go. Fellowship. It's the iron sharpening iron. That's what, if you think about iron sharpening iron, have you ever seen the chefs doing the, right? Well, they're not actually sharpening their blade. What they're doing with that rod and then the blade, they're going like that. They're taking the burrs off the blade to make the cut smoother and cleaner. And that's what our brothers and sisters do with us, right? When we're in a community, they help us to be better. They help us to be sharper. Okay. Since nobody else ever can be Jesus, there's only one Jesus. Where is he at right now? Seated at the right hand of the Father. Okay. Now here's the bonus question. What is the only man-made thing in heaven? The scars on Jesus' body. That is the only man-made thing in heaven. Today I hope we would trust in the true Jesus, not a make-believe Jesus, not a Jesus of our own creation, but the Jesus of Scripture. Because that is the only person in all of existence that can save us.